All right, everyone, welcome back to the studio. Here for another episode of Baseball TV. I'm Liam Mucklow.
Micah Gibbs.
And today we got a pretty interesting topic for you. It's pretty narrow, but I think it's one that's really, really important. I guess just to get right. So
Yeah.
what are we going to dive into?
So we're going to dive into drop 5, drop 3, and that transition, which is super, super important because these kids it's a very important phase in their baseball career where they've got to go from that drop weight. Now it really matters.
Yeah, if I mess up, say get my kid into the wrong drop 8 bat as he's making that transition, thankfully at his age, he's still going to have a place to play. Right. But if I completely botch this up, it could have an immediate detrimental effect to put the wrong bat in a kid's hand when they're going through critical stuff like high school tryouts.
Right. Because up until now, like you said, with that drop 8, you get a little bit off because you're facing a kid that's maybe a year older.
Right.
Whereas now in high school, we're facing kids 3-4 years older.
Yes. Well, so one of the things I find interesting when we start to drive into the spectrum of the BBCOR bats is the variety. And to Micah's point, all of a sudden now we're dealing with kids, bats designed for kids at what, like 14?
Right.
14?
Yeah, 14, 15.
All the way up to
22, 23, college.
Right. So there is no other drop weight category that spans that big a range of both age, skill, physical development.
Right.
So, where do we start?
Well, yeah, I think what we need to do is just kind of look at that spectrum.
All right.
And let's just see how that's built out.
Okay, cool. Let me call that up here. Everyone, be careful. This is going to get pretty heavy here. So, first off, what on earth is going down on this graph? What do we got here?
So down here, what we have from the very, very beginning all the way to the left, we have the drop 5 bats are in orange.
Right.
So you can see this is all the drop 5 bats in the Marucci lineup.
Right.
Yeah, right
all the way over here.
And you can just see there's not a whole lot of options. But again, like you said, they're really going after a smaller market. You're looking at 13, 14 years old and that bridge between 8 and 3.
Right.
Whereas like we were talking about with the blue bars, you have all the BBCOR bats. And like you said, we're putting that in the hand of a 14-year-old and a 23-year-old.
And at the same time, there's certainly not as many SKUs because it wouldn't make sense for a manufacturer to make that many SKUs in that drop weight. But at the same time, we take a look at the chart here, we see a range in BPI of 55 to 70.
Right.
So to try and put that into contextual terms, there's a 15% difference between the easiest and the hardest drop 5 bats to swing. Even still, that's a really big difference.
Right.
So, okay, and then what our blue ones are?
Blue or the BBCOR bats. Those are going to be your drop 3 high school, college players.
And so I've got, way down here, there's these two sort of lonely blue bars there hanging out with the orange. What is that?
Right.
What does that tell us?
So what those are going to be is those are going to be very balanced drop 3 bats that are going to be very, very easy for a drop 5 athlete to transition into.
Okay.
So that's where we can see that overlap of where it could be a really good fitting for a player.
And those ones in particular, those are the Victus Vandal,
Those
right?
are the Victus Vandals.
And what's cool, what they've done with the manufacturing of the Victus Vandal is, the end couple inches here is actually a composite into the barrel, and so that reduces the weight. It pulls the center of mass back closer towards the hand and still hits that overall weight, but when we shorten up that moment arm, it makes it a lot easier for the player to generate enough force to move the bat at the same speed.
Right. And by moment arm, you're talking about basically the difference between the hands and the balance.
Yeah, that's geek speak for but the spot between my hands on the bat and the center of mass of the bat. And there's so much that goes into the variability of player technique. It's the massive amount of ingredients in that recipe. But I think just understanding that if I can look for certain design characteristics, I can have my player move into a drop 3 that swings exactly the same as their drop 5.
Exactly.
Right. What are as we go through the chart here? What are some other, things that we can glean from?
Yeah, so I think a pretty interesting thing, if you look all the way to the right, that far right blue bar,
all the way down this end.
Yeah, all the way at the end, the very tallest bar, you're going to get the drop 3 Cat 8 Connect 3431.
Okay.
So that is actually going to be the highest BPI metal bat on the market and in Marucci's lineup.
Is that as one piece or two piece?
That's a 2-piece.
Okay, so the two pieces, what are each of the two pieces made of within that bat?
Right. So and the handle's going to be made up of a composite material. Right. Yeah. So now we're flipping that composite from the end cap now the other way to the hands. And what that's going to do is that's going to push that balance point further away from the hands and make that a much more difficult bat to swing.
All right. So, if I have a, if I'm looking, I'm just trying to think of a couple practical examples here. So, they make that connect bat in a drop 5, right?
Correct.
So if I've got if I'm swinging a drop 5 connect, where would I be looking to go when I get into the drop 3 realm if I want to match the length? Right? Because it doesn't mean we need to change length.
Right.
But would I be going into a connect product, or would I probably be looking at a 1-piece or even
you're
a
definitely going to be going into a 1-piece.
Okay.
Depending on the length, you could be going into just the 1-piece Cat 8,
right?
Or you could even be going into that Victus Vandal.
Okay, all right. So let's go through. Let's take a look. Trying to think of some examples we could give to people here about how these things would match up.
Right. Well, so I know one thing we could talk about is if I'm going shopping for a bat, if I'm a player, let's say I'm not going for a bat fitting, and I'm just going to go get one right off the rack.
Sure.
I swung a 32 last year. I feel like I can go swing a 33. I go into the store and I'm looking for just a 33 because that's what I think I should be swinging.
Right.
Well, if I go get a 33 in that, like we said, that 2-piece Cat 8 Connect,
right,
or the Victus Vandal, that spread is double digits. That's a 10 to 12 point BPI point difference.
So that's like, it's 10 to 12% different in the amount of energy it takes to power that bat. That is very, very different for the athlete.
So just to compare that, let's say you swung the Cat 8 last year.
Right.
And you went from that 32 to that 38.
Yeah.
You're making, or 32 to the 33. You're making that same jump from the 2-piece to the Vandal. So by making that mistake, you could be almost swinging the improper length, weight, everything.
So just botch everything.
Botch everything, yeah.
Okay, well, let's take a look. Let's go here. What's the deal with these? What's going on? What's the story behind these two?
Right. So this is the Victus Vandal we were talking about.
Right.
Very balanced, compositing cap. Yep. Everything else aluminum.
Right.
Okay. So that's going to make, like we said, a much more balanced bat. And like we were talking about, if you're going in to buy a 33-inch bat, these are going to be the two polar opposites.
Okay, so what have I got going on here?
Over there, you got the Cat 8 Connect. So that's going to be the one with the composite handle, midsection, into the aluminum barrel.
Right, so everything down here is the light components, right?
Correct.
The carbon graphite is lighter than metal. I can make it stiffer than metal. That allows me to put the metal barrel up here on the end, and it pushes that mass as far away from my hands as possible.
Correct.
How different are these?
So if we go, let's say we go to the 34-inch length.
Okay.
That's going to be a BPI change of 12, which is probably one of the biggest BPI spreads there is within one length.
Now, and say like 12% difference. That's a huge bat. What's a BPI change that our research has shown significant for an MLB player?
For an MLB player, significant where they start to really notice a change is 2 BPI.
Right.
So we're talking 6 times that.
Right.
Which is crazy.
It's a lot. All right. So. I guess a couple key takeaways. I think the easy one out there for people is when you're making that transition, consider the way the bat's actually made, right? Like what components, what materials go into the bat, and how does that affect the distribution of mass? I feel that's one of the easiest, lowest hanging fruit for people to go, and just understand when they head in to go buy a new bat.
Right. Well, because I think that's probably the most important, because if we go from one length to another, even within the same drop weight, we need to know when we're making that change, are we ready to make that big of a jump to go from the same model in that length to the next length? That's a big change. Or should we maybe be looking at that more balance to make it a little bit easier of a transition?
So that's where I think what I'm hearing there is if I want to have different zone coverage and I want two bats that are going to swing the same for the athlete, I may be looking at something like a 33-inch Connect and a 34-inch Vandal.
Right.
Okay, I like it. So hopefully that gives everyone out there some good ideas about how we can select the right bat based on the actual design properties of how it's made.
Yeah.
All right, it's time to get out of here. We'll be back for another episode. Where are you going?
I think I'm going to go to Victus Vandal Land.
Head up to Philly? All right,
Yeah.
I'm going straight back to Baton Rouge.
All
See
right,
y'all.
see you guys.